And she was one of the most high-profile and outspoken elected supporters of Bernie Sanders in 2016. Now Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is making her own run for the White House, and she is our guest this morning. Congresswoman, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Adam. Good to be here.
So you have to travel farther than any other presidential candidate to get here, but when you do get here to New Hampshire, you're making your time count with these visits that are 4 and 5 days long with lots of small, intimate events. Tell us, what's your strategy for trying to win the First in the Nation primary?
Really just getting out and meeting and hearing from voters all across New Hampshire. It's such a great opportunity both for me to be able to introduce myself to folks, let them know about who I am, where I come from, and why I'm asking to serve them as President and Commander-in-Chief, and also to hear directly from them about a lot of the challenges that folks in New Hampshire are facing, which are frankly not very different from challenges that people across this country are trying to tackle.
You mentioned the Commander-in-Chief thing.
Yeah.
You serve this country in uniform, so you've experienced foreign policy at the most basic level, being the tip of the spear, essentially. But how would foreign policy work, our approach to the rest of the world under a Gabbard administration?
Well, first of all, I serve as a soldier still in the Hawaii Army National Guard, have done so for about 15 years and on 2 deployments to the Middle East. Throughout over 6 years in Congress, I've served on both the House Foreign Affairs and the Armed Services Committees, so have seen and experienced firsthand the brunt of the result of our foreign policy on our service members and the impact in other parts of the world where we wage wasteful interventionist wars, as well as what is wrong with our foreign policy in Washington. So to answer your question, I think there's a couple of things that we need to do. One is to end these wasteful regime change wars that have proven to be so costly, costing taxpayers trillions of dollars, this nuclear arms race costing us trillions of dollars, and bring those dollars back to serve the needs of people, meet their needs that they're dealing with every single day. How we are relating to other countries is so important. This is not an isolationist policy. It's a policy of actually building partnerships and a foreign policy that's based on cooperation rather than conflict. Getting rid of this fossilized zero-sum foreign policy that says in order for the United States to win, everyone else must lose. There are a lot of areas of common interest. We've got to be able to work with and build relationships with other countries to accomplish those mutual objectives.
Yeah. On the relationships with other countries front, you've taken some heat for your support or relationship with President Bashar al-Assad of Syria. Where do you draw the line with a leader in terms of, if you're the president, what does a leader of a country have to do to get on your bad side, I guess, in terms of humanitarian or anti-freedom values?
Well, first of all, just to correct the record, I don't support Assad or don't have a relationship with him or any other dictator in the world. My actions and my policy have been in the pursuit of peace and security. It's acknowledging and understanding that unless our leaders have the courage to have conversations with and to have talks with other leaders, whether they be adversaries or potential adversaries, the only alternative is war. War must be saved as a last resort. We've got to be able to pursue these diplomatic paths towards peace and security. The regime change wars that our country has led, most recently in countries like Iraq and Libya and Syria, have most often been sold to the American people under the guise of humanitarianism. In reality, the results of these wars have been increasing the suffering of people in these countries. They have undermined our own national security in strengthening terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They have taken an extremely high cost and toll on our service members and their families. What to speak of the costs that every single American is paying and the trillions of dollars that are going towards these wars that don't serve our interests and don't serve the interests of the people in those countries, dollars that we desperately need to serve the needs of our people and our communities.
Well, we're in the neighborhood of Syria there. What's your position on President Trump's tweet in which he said it's time for the United States to recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights?
I think it was unnecessary and once again a political ploy to serve the interests of Trump and Netanyahu in Israel, where they have elections just coming up in a few short weeks. It is short-sighted. This action was short-sighted by Trump and something that could potentially increase the likelihood of conflict between a number of countries who are operating within the region: the United States, Israel, Syria, Iran, and Russia. It's these kinds of short-sighted actions and policies that don't serve the interest of our country or our national security.
We see a lot of Democratic presidential candidates declining to go to this policy conference of the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC. Do you think Democrats need to be careful at all as they proceed here, highlighting policy differences with AIPAC or Israel, especially when the president is pushing this narrative that there is something more to this, perhaps anti-Semitism?
Look, I think it's important for us to stay focused on the issues. There's a whole lot of partisanship and kind of distractions away from what our focus should be, which is how are our policies, both here in the United States, as well as our relationships with other countries, best serving the interest of our people and our country. So that's what I'm focused on, and seeing where are those areas of shared interest, how can we strengthen cooperations with other countries, while also being able to deal with some of the tough issues that we face. One
of the issues that's really come up quite a bit in this Democratic primary, at least with other campaigns, is talk of reparations. American slavery, reparations to Native Americans for the taking of tribal lands. What about in Hawaii? The United States basically took over in 1893. What's your position on reparations to indigenous peoples of Hawaii?
Yeah, you know, there was a piece of legislation that was introduced by someone who I had the privilege of working for as a legislative aide in the United States Senate, a friend and mentor, U.S. Senator Daniel Akaka, that was basically legislation that issued an official apology to the Native Hawaiian people. That bill was signed into law by President Clinton, and I think something similar needs to take place for other indigenous people and for the dark tragedy of slavery that occurred in our country's history. I'm a co-sponsor of a piece of legislation, H.R. 40 in Congress, that would basically create a commission to provide a recommendation to Congress on how best to provide reparations to those descendants of slaves.
And one of the issues we hear when we talk to Democratic Party voters, you had to apologize at the beginning of this campaign for past anti-gay rights activism. When someone from New Hampshire approaches you and says, what's this all about? How do I know what your position is on this issue? What do you tell them?
First of all, my commitment to fighting for equality for all Americans, fighting for equality for LGBTQ Americans is long-standing. Throughout my record in Congress over 6 years, I have 100% legislative rating from organizations like the Human Rights Campaign that is pushing for LGBTQ equality, have co-sponsored and pushed forward a number of pieces of legislation to do so. I was brought up in a very socially conservative family and held views when I was very young that I no longer hold today. I apologize and regret for some of the things that I said when I was younger that were hurtful to our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. My legislative record is a reflection of what's in my heart and my commitment to continuing to further this fight for equality, as we still need to make changes in this country to achieve that goal.
With that evolution in place, do you consider yourself the progressive champion in this race, the most progressive Democrat running?
Look, I'm focused on fighting for our people and fighting for our planet. Different people interpret the word progressive in different ways, so I just want to make clear to folks that are watching at home, for myself, that this really isn't about one label or another, representing one part of the country or another. It's really about seeing how we best come together to put people ahead of profits, people ahead of partisan politics, and actually focus on how we can best serve the needs of our people and build that more perfect union.
Okay, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, we'll see you out there on the campaign trail. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to see you.